towards showing the true pluriversality of our knowledges, showing that we should have space within this institution to actually share our different knowledges. We should have space within this institution to actually show that different forms of education exist and that we're able to learn from. You know, an education that is coming directly from our communities. This is an education for liberation. And this is something that faculties across the world, mainstream faculties, you know, like those of Waikato University, also universities in Aotearoa, that right now, and in Canada, for example, that right now are mainstream, you know, university institutions that have committed themselves to actually working for true decolonial education led by indigenous communities. Now, so this is not something where we're disrupting lessons. We're out here literally just holding space for education, holding space for dialogue, to listen to our communities. You know, our communities, they're calling in. We've got a sibling calling in at 2 p.m. They're a Bengali grassroots community organizer and alumni. Yesterday we had here Bel Ribeiro Adi, who's also signed on to the Global Declaration of Planet Repairs Action Learning. This is a member of parliament. She came down here yesterday and spoke around, you know, the need for these sort of spaces. And so when security comes down to actually attack on this, they must know that there are actually members of parliament that have come down to support this and that have actually signed on to say the need for us to actually have these spaces of true dialogue, of true education, that is actually committed to building reparations, that is committing to defending our people's rights, committing to giving us the true education, which these so-called institutions like to talk about in their Black History Month. You know, they say this is Black History Month, but when people actually say, you know, we want our true educations to come through, we want an education that is talking about our histories. You know, we want to have a space in this institution. You know, this building here has so many empty classrooms. It should be that our communities are able to teach in them. You know, it should be that, for example, we've got people in our communities that speak Twi, that speak Ewe, that speak Yoruba, that speak Quechua. You know, they're giving jobs to all these professors around this stuff. We should have community educators in these spaces, you know, on Saturdays, for example. It should be right now we're holding this small space and just this little tent where we're basically having intercultural dialogues with indigenous communities across the world, as is happening from 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. today, where indigenous communities from Mexico, you know, the Otomi, which is an indigenous community, also the regional council, Totonaco Council, are participating in this event to actually share what are their demands on these university spaces. And this SOAS University is right now cracking down on this. You know, we can see that we've got security here. They've said that they're going to cut this off. And we need to say that we're really against that. That should not be okay, because we need spaces where we actually have our education. We need spaces that are committed to building dialogue. Now, if the university is down to actually cram down on and cut out our true education spaces, then what is this really about? When we're going into lectures and they're talking to you about decolonization, what does that mean? If when we actually trying to implement their own decolonization vision, you know, this isn't something that was picked out of the sky. We're trying to implement the university's own decolonizing vision, you know? Literally saying, we want our communities to be engaging in this space. We want this to be a space where we're working in service of our communities. You know, this must be a space where we're able to listen to the needs of our communities and actually build alongside them. Now, as SOAS continues to clamp down on this, as they continue to try and annihilate these spaces, we need to really be putting pressure upon management and saying that we are not okay for this, you know? We want to also share that, you know, for example, the Wednesday is actually Indigenous Day of Resistance. This is an international day where communities would be participating in actually sharing what they're doing in their own communities. Now, they're gonna be calling in from, for example, Guerrero. We've also, which is the CIPOG, which is the Popular Indigenous Council of Guerrero, Emiliano Zapata. And they're a council that basically, in their communities, what happened was that narco organized crime groups basically came in, started shooting whole communities, displacing whole communities, assassinating peoples. And the communities and mining companies then came in, so there was forced displacement to then implement mining and do extractivism, right? And so these communities, they're actually going to talk to us about how it is confronting these mining, confronting these extractivist industries, confronting these death projects, how it is that they've actually been building autonomy, how it is that they've actually been forced into, building the institutions in their own communities that defend their rights. Now it should be that when we come into these institutions, we're able to actually back them in that way, And so that is going to be a call tomorrow. Obviously, they want to clamp down on these calls, and so we really want to call on people to stop and actually join us, because it's what's going to give us security. Security is out here. We know that they're workers too. But they also need to know that this is for our people. Like we want space that is actually for defending our people's rights globally. This is for all of our people. There's a reason why, when we talk to security, there are people from Algeria, people from Sierra Leone, people from Nigeria that are telling us about, the actual resistance struggles that are happening in their lands. Right now, in all of our countries, like I'm from Mexico, it's the same. We all have extractivism. We all have people that are violating our people on a daily basis. Governments that are violating our people. If institutions that are saying that they are committed to decolonization, institutions that are saying that they're for our people, aren't able to back us, then how can we even think about actually building a front on this side of the world that is able to be for the liberation of our people back home? Because these guys are the so-called good guys, and look at what they're doing, And that's why we have to see that it's just like, this is the colonial miseducation that they're enforcing on our communities. And so this is why we have the necessity to actually take back space, keep holding space for intercultural dialogue.
Yeah, now there's some things that we've already heard and said and we've heard before. This one goes a bit like this. Decolonize. 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 Random, stay first. Because this one's really about actually us holding space and imagining that our own people could be teaching and educating us. We should have our aunties actually paid to be inside these institutions teaching us in their so-called African studies departments. But we've got a long way to go before these spaces actually belong to us and come back from actually supporting our communities to build the power and build ourselves back into a powerful people that aren't begging an institution to give us space. We came here today, and we've come here throughout the week, to present and share from our communities what is happening. Now it's Black History Month, so-called. And during this month, we've taken this time alongside communities elsewhere to share what is actually happening back home. Which is why is it that SOAS alumni, like Fahad Shah, is sitting in prison in Kashmir right now, and that is not being taught or being popularized in this university. Now when we come to share stories like that, we have a situation where there's a clampdown or we're told that we don't have approval. That is a conversation that needs to happen between the University of London and the School of Oriental and African Studies. But it's a conversation that has happened, and we sit here and say that that dialogue has already begun. SOAS has approved this event, and that needs to be cleared up as a failure of the bureaucracy of an establishment that requires people to fill in all of these risk assessments, filling into all of these forms, instead of letting students, ordinary people, breathe in our own languages, talk about what our actual struggles are, and be as human beings. If we don't want to wake up to what time it is, when the world is at war, and we think that this is the primary battle to waste our time at, then we are lost, truly, as a society. And we're not going to entertain more wasting time of dialogue, wasting time thinking about, what should have happened, because this is the type of conversations we should be happening, which is what type of education do we need? What education should we be learning about? And where are we actually going to build ourselves into fact making these universities about us, about our people? So we'll be here continuing the Planet Repair's Action Learning Educational Revolution. We'll be here alongside those of our communities who have signed on and who support this initiative. And we invite you to stay and stick around for dialogue, because that is how we actually learn. And we might learn something today about what this system looks like when people choose to stand up and talk about our real history. What this system turns to do when we actually choose to wake up and talk about the realities of our communities in struggle right now. Because there are colonized peoples all around the world who are struggling a lot harder than we are to hold space and to actually have real conversations about education. So do stick around. This is a space that has been claimed for our own dialogues and for these own conversations to actually happen. And this is what we mean by the Walter Rodney Freedom Square, a space that is about all of us actually coming together and really sharing. Now, what does this mean for students who are here? This means that your education should be backed by your own communities. But we don't have access to these spaces. So how are we going to make access to these spaces for our communities to own them? How are we going to do that if, when we try to have this dialogue, we're kicked out of these spaces? There's a reason why most people are scared and don't challenge authority or challenge establishment. Because they employ people that look like us, who know that there can be more, to stop us from actually doing what needs to be done. But this system knows that its time is up, this system knows that it's finished, and these conversations are going to happen whether they like it or not. If it's not here, then it'll be in the Keta Lagoon where communities are fighting back to make sure that they secure their land, or it'll be in the Niger Delta where people are telling Shell to get the hell out of their land, and it'll be in places like Brixton where the fire will never ever leave. And we're inviting students to get serious about getting involved in your own community struggles rather than thinking that you can be here, study on your community's time, and waste time at our expense. And this is an open, friendly conversation. We welcome those who have come down to support, but we want to make it clear to the University of London that we are here on the permission of our communities. We are not here on the permission of a white colonizer or an establishment that is telling us where we can be, when and where, when they are on our lands, fucking up our people right now today. No one can tell us where we're going to be. So we are here and we are going to hold this space because this space belongs to a world's people. And if you're for that, share this message, stick around, but we aren't going anywhere. Decolonize! 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 If you don't know what's happening, there's a Planet Repair's declaration about why we're here. Come closer, have a look at the letter that was shared and signed to actually hear about, you don't have to be on camera, about why we're here. We don't have demands, we have